Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this February 27th edition of Generally Irritable. It is the Sunday before town meeting day, which, as many of you know, if you are one of my viewers in Vermont, is the day that we Vermonters elect our local officials. So it's our city councilors, our town select board, voter registrars, ward clerks, all of those local offices that affect your towns and cities. And I don't know if you guys know this, some towns actually still have town meeting day. So it used to be that Vermonters would take the first Tuesday of March off, and they would all go to their local, Grange or city hall or whatever it is, and they would debate the conversations instead of just having arbitrary words on a ballot for ballot items that you then have to go research yourself. People would actually argue it out right then on town meeting day. That's when candidates would present themselves and share their candidacy. And then the town would vote there in the town hall, in the town square, or Grange, or whatever it is. And most Vermont towns have gotten away from that. I know Fletcher still does it. But here in Burlington, we've got all the 8 wards, and they have, we've got the voting booths all around the city. So we just go, we get it, or some of us. So you guys all know I'm not doing the mail-in balloting. Oops, am I messing up my microphone? Be careful. I like to go into the polls. I like the old-fashioned way, so that's what I'm going to do. So now we've got this sort of disjointed voting system. So I kind of, just for the record, I think we should go back to having real town meeting days like we used to. I'm just throwing that out there to all my city council candidates. Let's bring back actual town meeting day. Everybody gets the day off so that we can get together and actually hash this stuff out. That's what I think we should do. But why am I talking about town meeting day, aside from the fact that it's in 2 days from now? Because my guest tonight is a candidate for city council. So tonight you're going to meet Olivia Taylor. She is running as an independent for the Ward 7 city council seat here in Burlington. So she is actually just on the other side of North Avenue from me. I'm in Ward 4. Alice says it's so sad that we don't do the town meeting day anymore. I agree with you. But Olivia is going to be joining us today. She's going to talk a little bit about her candidacy and maybe some of her priorities that she hopes to address here in Burlington. But why I really got excited to have her on was her interest in housing. I particularly was interested in some suggestions that I heard her mention when she was giving her campaign pitch. I think it was to the NPA or some group like that. And it was the first time I had heard somebody who was considered something like a tenants advocate, who was talking about ways to help both sides, both the landlords and the tenants. She talked about tax breaks for landlords to do long-term rentals instead of, short-term or things like that. And I said, okay, this is somebody that I need to talk to, because I have been trying to talk to the tenants union and folks like that for the last few years to say, I can't speak for all landlords, but I will say for me personally, and for most of the landlords that I know in Burlington, we really want to be good housing providers. And it's not the tenants that we have a problem with, it's the city. The city's rules make it really challenging and really hard and really way more expensive to be a housing provider here in Burlington. And so how can we work together to relieve some of those things? So really liked her ideas. Really excited to have a conversation with somebody who's not on the same side of the political aisle as me, but cares about Burlington and wants to see affordable housing here so that we can all live happy and healthy and not have all of our money going to frickin' taxes and other stuff. So without further ado, let me introduce Miss Olivia Taylor.
Hello. Hi. Thank you so
Hello.
much for having me. I'm
You
really excited. I think we have had a lot of good conversations about housing, and I look forward to continuing that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So why don't we start out while we're getting a little warmed up before we get into the nitty gritty? Take a moment, share with our viewers a little bit about you, about what you do, and why you're so passionate about serving the city of Burlington and housing in particular.
Yeah, of course. So my name's Olivia. I grew up in Connecticut, but please don't hold that against me. I went to Burlington to attend UVM. It was a place I think, like many, I fell in love with when I saw it, and I studied environmental studies. I got a Bachelor of Science, and then hung out in Burlington and worked as an academic coach for students with learning disabilities and on the autism spectrum. I then went to grad school and then came back to Burlington and got a job working in international development consulting, where we do a lot of private sector engagement work between the public and private sector in developing countries. And I guess for why I was involved or want to be involved in politics is it's been something that I've loved my whole life. I think in eighth grade, I wrote my first letter to a senator, and I joined all these different clubs in undergrad. I was interning in the state house. I got a job as a climate change intern at the Agency of Transportation. So I was working in the Agency of Transportation for a bit. And then I just continued to want to get more and more involved. I do a lot of community service in a lot of different ways. And I'm one of those people who works best when my schedule is full. So I do a lot of things and I try to just do as much as I can to help and build up the community that has welcomed me and that I love a lot.
That's awesome. First of all, the letter to the senator when you were a kid is awesome. I love that story. I like to tell people because I was very similar to what you just described. I grew up in Milton, and there was an oil spill in the Lamoille River, which runs through Milton, and small spill of a local oil company, and I went at like 12 years old to go interview the president of the fuel company to be like, how are you going to make sure that never happens again? That kind of a thing. So I love that you've always had this servant heart. You wanted to make a difference in your community, it sounds like.
Yeah, definitely always cared a lot deeply about people, about the environment, and um, have just done everything in my spare time, my academic and my professional life to do as much as I can.
Well, and I'm trying to remember. I read it somewhere on the website of the place where you work, and
Mhm.
I'm trying to find it now because I just thought of it. I remembered reading something that basically said, we try to figure out how to everybody to get to compromise and have a win-win scenario, essentially.
Yeah, we look
And
for really common goals and where we intersect.
so
And I
that
think
so
a lot of my life, my academic and work life has been that because my undergrad degree or my graduate degree was about explaining science to politicians and explaining politics to scientists and be that middle person. So I think a lot of my life has been be the negotiator, be the middle person. How do I get people to speak the same language, communicate with each other? In work, we're taking USAID, so the US Agency for International Development. We have contracts with them and we work with developing countries. So I'm doing a project in Malawi right now and have done ones in Ethiopia and Sudan and a bunch of different places. And we're working with the private sector there and our public sector to try to say, all right, where do we agree and how can we build that together?
that is so cool. What a
Yeah.
great learning opportunity to learn how to negotiate and to kind of walk those lines and figure out how to talk about it. I was
Yeah.
literally just talking to somebody the other day. Um, I said, we can't even agree on what words mean anymore. How do we have a conversation
Yeah.
when we think that we have a different definition of words?
Mm-hmm.
And now, and you're talking about not just our our own interpretation of the English language, right? We're talking about, okay, well then culturally, like you're going to have a language
Mm-hmm.
issue, not only a language barrier when you're trying to work out something like that, probably with multiple languages from multiple other stakeholders who want to help, but then also the cultural differences. What's
Mm-hmm.
that like?
It's definitely interesting. I think it was something, one of the things I think that's a great example of that is that we had a day where we were like trying to plan interviews with the private sector, and we had no idea it was a public holiday there, and no one was taking that time for interviews. And we were like, wait, we should know this. Like, the first thing we should do when we're working in a country is look at their public holidays. And that was, I think that was just like a come on, Olivia, like duh moment, because I was like, yeah, you need to, you like their holidays are different, so we have to communicate our holidays to them and be like, hey, just so
Mm.
you know, this is a bank holiday for us. Like, we're not going to
Oh
be in the
yeah.
office. So it's definitely holiday communication is like you'd think would be so simple and ends up being much more like that's something you need to think about. You have to say, hey, like I did a project when we could still travel to in the Caribbean, and we were doing work in Trinidad and Tobago, and they have a big carnival. And we were at first trying to get down there, and we're like, why is everything so expensive that week? And we're like, oh, because it's a big event and everyone's going there. So just really like learning about the different holidays and important days in a different country and in different cultures just adds another element of okay, we already have the time difference and now we have to check all the holidays. So it's definitely it's hard. And I think when we were working in Ethiopia specifically, the government would sometimes shut down the internet. So then we
Oh
were like,
wow.
okay, we got to move our project 2 weeks till we can get people to communicate with us because their internet is shut down. And yeah, there's a lot of like struggles with working remotely with the private sector in developing countries.
I was just gonna go down a rabbit trail that is probably totally unnecessary. Like, why would the government turn off the internet?
If there was a, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I think what was happening was there were
Oh,
uprisings, and I think that it was to
oh,
limit just like meetings and conversations and stuff. So I think
oh
it was
goodness,
yeah, it was
something
definitely
like
like a
that.
scary time, but yeah, and I think
Okay,
the US mission still had power, but still had
good
internet, but
lord.
yeah, but
Okay.
there's definitely all these complications you don't think of.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so somebody just commented, "Am I frozen or are you?" Sherry Lynn, I think you're the one who's frozen, unless somebody else can tell me if I'm frozen. But we're fine on our end. You're not having any issues, are you, Miss Olivia?
No,
Okay.
I can see you fine.
All right. Let me just double check. Let me just double check. Hold on. Make sure we're not having problems.
Just a normal
Do do
pandemic
do.
remote conversation at
Oh,
this
yep.
point.
Nope. Yeah, I know, right? Nope. It is running on Facebook, so we should be good. Sherry Lynn, it's you.
Good.
Oh, I'm not frozen anymore. Okay, good.
Good.
Okay. So very cool jobs. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit jealous. I kind of wanna try. I want that job. That sounds really cool.
It
Um,
is. It's very cool. Yeah.
that is very, very cool. Okay. So now before we dive into housing, why don't you just share a few things that if you're elected to city council on Tuesday, what are a few of your biggest priorities? We know housing is one of them because we're going to be talking about that today. What are
hmm
some other big things that you are hoping to achieve or that you want to focus on as a counselor?
Yeah. I think one of my biggest things is broad, so I'll specify, is just building community. I feel like
Mm.
through the pandemic and through so much like tension in this in our city. I really want to create more cohesion and community. And I think part of that is finding and identifying how can city council find kind of the easy wins, the things that are everyone's going to agree on, and we're going to build camaraderie around those things so that when we have to talk
Mm,
about the harder issues, we have more like respect for each other. I think one of my favorite things about Vermont is the state house, is the fact that they don't have desks and they eat together and they interact with one another. And I think we need to interact with each other with less high stakes things in order to really learn to negotiate and give. And I think being someone who definitely identifies as a progressive myself, I also recognize that people in who I'm friends with, people I live near, are not progressives, and that I can't push my political beliefs onto everyone. Instead, I have to kind of see, where do we all agree?
mm,
Where are our priorities as a group, and how do we move forward with those things? I think we've forgotten that politics is compromise, and that's
yeah.
something that is extremely important to get things done. And I think that finding those shared value areas is really important. So, building community through finding things that we all agree on, including something that I think would be really easy is a streamlined rental application process. So, that's the first thing I would want to do is how do we make it so there's a website where you go on and you plug in all your information. I last time I had to apply to apartments, I had to plug in the same information on 50 different applications. And I was like, this is the same information, but in a different order. I just want to put it in one spot. And then people who are landlords who are not big groups that have someone who specifically can
Hmm.
read every single application can just look at this website and have a much easier streamlined process to accept people. And I think that that would make it easier for local landlords, for tenants, for people who speak different languages or English as a second language. They can translate it
Mm,
more easily. I think it would just be an easier process for everyone. And I think that it would be hard to disagree with it.
mm. That is an interesting idea. And I just love what you said about that we need to come together when the stakes aren't so high. And
Yeah,
it is one of the things that uh, I have said over and over and over again is we're not a neighborhood anymore. You know, it used to be when, as an example, when my mom grew up in this, so I got to buy the house that my mom grew up in. So this was my grandparents' house. They had it built in 1963 when they were building this whole neighborhood. I think it cost like $10,000 when it was first built or something like that. It was crazy. But or maybe it was more. I'm sure it was more than that, but it was something. I remember learning it and I was like, I didn't even know there was that little amount of money back then. That's crazy. Um but you know, there was all kinds of kids growing up in the neighborhood that my mom could play with. There were kids our age that we could play with. You know, now it's a lot of maybe older folks or even young professionals, but they work from home. And so we don't, you know, and now everybody's working from home. So we're not even in our workplaces together anymore. And so
right.
we aren't talking to each other. We aren't
Yep.
sharing our hurts and our wins. And you know, so like when I tell people, you know, I joke that moving back to Burlington is what turned me into a Republican, because it was like I moved back here and the freaking I got immediately ended up in court with the city, and they like have been trying to remove one of our housing units this whole time. And I go, what are you doing? We have a housing crisis. We haven't even done anything wrong. You're like doing this on an administrative loophole. Like, why? We've never had a code violation. Like, what are you guys doing? And that's when I was like, okay, the government just is terrible and I hate everybody. and and
Yeah.
that was kind of like what like really sort of helped turn me into a small government conservative. That's what I say. I'm a small government conservative. Um because you know, I would love to know my neighbors better. You know, I've thought often about having a freaking block party in our backyard. You know, we're on the bike path. why not just throw up a sign and just have a barbecue for people walking by? And then, of
I'll
course,
come.
I know, right? Well, and I thought about it, and then the pandemic
Yeah.
happened, and like, I mean, if we had any gatherings here at all, people would like yell at us about stuff, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
we don't trust each other anymore. We don't work together anymore.
Yeah.
Uh, we're not
And I
raising
think
each.
we
Go
only
ahead.
communicate online anonymously, basically. So I don't think we have the positive experiences with neighbors that I grew up in the same kind of environment where we were all just biking around, hanging out at each other's houses, and I think the pandemic really pushed us all away from each other, and that's been so hard and sad to
Yes,
see.
made it worse. You are
We're
correct.
going through trauma all together. We should be helping each other out and not blaming each other, and really just supporting one another. And that's why
I
the mutual aid groups that have been popping up around Burlington, and just seeing the little free pantries and all of those things, the things that
Yep,
individuals have been doing has been really cool. Seeing the
heartening.
food that has been around, Burlington gifting on Facebook, people give each other things that they don't need anymore so that we're not all buying stuff. And it's just been really cool to see all these mutual aid groups pop up, and that's something that is, I think, a priority for me in building community. If I were elected, I would want to put more support behind the things that already exist, that community members have already put together,
Mm,
um, like mutual aid groups. Those are things that are already working. We don't need to come up with our own programs. There's programs that are working. We could just assist those.
yeah,
And I
how do
think a
we
lot
just
of,
make
yeah,
like get people's eyes on them, know that they can
yep,
support them, and or if you need support or
right.
whatever. Yeah.
And that's a lot of what I do at work is we look at small business associations or commerce groups, and we're like, all right, who is already doing workforce development? Who is already doing like all this kind of work? How do we support them instead of just remaking the program that they're already doing successfully?
Mm, yep.
And I think that's something we need to do here.
That is really, really smart. I really like that idea. I love it. Medic Knight says, Livy, you should volunteer for Erica's congressional campaign. I like that idea. She's probably going to volunteer for one of the progressives, I'm guessing, but I would love to have you on the team. I actually do have a couple of progressives, and so-called self-proclaimed socialists, self-proclaimed progressives, or Bernie bros, who support me and support my campaign. And I think that what we're really seeing in some of this conversation, Olivia, is the shared values, right?
Hmm.
So I'm going to guess that you and I have a lot of the same shared values. We just disagree about how to get to that end, or
Yeah,
who's responsible to get us there, or
yeah.
whatever, right?
And a
But
lot of
we
that just comes from personal experience and what we've seen that works and what doesn't work. And the best way to figure out how to make that work is to share all of our different experiences and learn from each other.
Oh Lord Jesus, thank you. My goodness. This is what I'm talking about. Because people talk I talk to people all the time, and sometimes people will hear my life story and they'll think, well, it doesn't make sense that you're a conservative. Given what you've experienced, you're supposed to be a Democrat. Or I'm sure you might even hear stuff like that. Well, Olivia, if you think this, then shouldn't you be a, whatever other label people want to put on you, right?
Hmm.
And we've gotten so accustomed, because human beings, I think, like psychologically, right, human beings, we want to put people in boxes because it helps us understand the world around us. This is an actual psychological thing. I'm not just making things up, right?
Yeah,
You know so we want to
yeah,
put labels on things so we can understand it and make sense of it. But when we do that, we just disregard all of the other parts of the human being that we're talking to.
yeah. We don't consider the human part. We try to find patterns, and we try to say, okay, well, everyone I've met who has done this was this way, so therefore that is who this person is. And I
Yes.
think, yeah, it's
Yep.
very natural, but it's definitely been extremely exacerbated by
Social.
remote
Mm-hmm.
life and just all the political uh everything that has been happening in the last four it's more than 4 years.
Oh
That,
yeah.
yeah, just a
Yeah. It's
lot of
just,
stuff has been
it's,
happening, and I think we're just pushing each other further and further apart, and
yep.
it's sad. It's disappointing to see.
It is. It's really pointless and stupid. If I can say that.
Yes.
Um, so, oh, and just so everybody knows, everybody that's watching, if you have a question specific for Olivia or specific about housing when we get into that, feel free to put it in the chat, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch. We'll see your chat, or I'll see your chat, and we can ask the question. So that'll be good. Okay, so is there anything else that you think you want to share about your campaign? And any other priorities that you want to make sure you cover, or anything like that?
um I mean, the big thing too is oh, there's so many things that I would want
I
to
know,
do. I
right?
mean, the main reason I want to do it is because I want to figure out what is possible. And I
Mm,
think that the best way to do that is to be in that position, just like
yeah,
I've been kind of learning what is possible while campaigning. Being in city council would be the best way for me to know what does a city council like have the ability to do? What are we not doing that exists? And how do we build our city better, and how do I use all these connections that I already have, make more connections, and create a space that is productive and something that everyone is proud of? And I think I guess similar to you, have those sometimes like government moments, but those have motivated me to be like, okay, how can I do something?
yeah,
So my thought is like, okay, I'm frustrated. So what do I do with that frustration? When I was in high school, I wanted to move to New Zealand, and that was my answer. But as I got older, I was like, no, you don't leave the place that you love. You try to change it and you make it better. And
yep,
that's how you know that you really care for a place and people, is that you want to do everything you can to make it a better place.
yep. It is really easy and often understandable to say, I'm just gonna go. I've had a lot of
Yeah.
friends leave the last few years, especially folks with kids, because they're like, we can't afford to live here anymore. We can't, we want to have another child, but we can't because
Mhm.
our property taxes went up $4,000 last year, or fill in the blank.
Mhm. Yep.
And uh but at the same time, I me personally, I'm a fighter. If I see something, if I see an injustice or something like that, um I will run into the fire. That is what I will do. I don't know, it's just how I'm built. I don't know if it's how I was raised, or it's just a innate character quality. But it's like you said, I want to do something about it. If I see people are hurting or suffering, I want to see if I can fix it, or at least direct a solution,
Yeah.
somehow. And
And I
so
feel like
I
I
love that.
have the energy to do that. And a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people have children and multiple jobs and a lot of things going on. And I feel like I struggled a lot with, why does my voice matter, and why do I want to be on city council? Why do I want to be in politics at all? And I really just kept coming back to the point that I feel like I have the time and the energy to do it, and not everyone who wants to does. And I think I
Yeah.
owe it to all of them to do that, to use my time and my energy to make things better for as many people as I can. And that's, I think, one of the hardest things of running a campaign is that I know there are people out there who don't know me, who don't like me. And that's been a hard thing for me to really like
Yep.
be with, because I always had the goal of, I want to have a positive experience with everyone I meet, and I want everyone to think of me as someone who's in their corner and who's a caretaker and is going to fight for them. And
Mm,
campaigning, you're not going to be that for everyone,
no.
and that is definitely a hard thing, but it doesn't make me want to fight any less.
That is awesome. This is so funny. Listening to you talk, I'm just like, she's like, we're like the opposite sides of the coin, which is so fun.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to sit down and get some coffee or something. I want
I
to know like
agree.
what
Yeah.
your life was like growing up. This is so I want to know your life stories. Um,
Yeah. And that's the thing. Once you get to know, like, I want to know everyone's life story. I want to know everyone's experiences in life and understand what makes them the person that they are, because people aren't just, they don't just believe things out of nowhere. They all
yeah.
come from something, and there's more to everyone than we see. And yeah, I like
Oh,
knowing that. I like being
yeah.
like everyone, I get to know everyone, and I get to know so many cool things. And there's always things that you agree on. There's always things that you're going to learn that you had no idea and you couldn't have guessed. And it's fun getting to know people, and that has been a positive thing of campaigning, is
That's
just
good.
getting to know people.
Yeah, not yeah, that's I totally laughed when you were like, "Yeah, people don't even know me and they don't like me." I'm like I had a supporter of mine. They had a one of my yard signs out for the Senate campaign, and their neighbors started avoiding them, and they said, "Hey, haven't seen you. I haven't you stopped by or whatever." Well, because you support a white supremacist. And it's like, how do you even get that? Uh, how do you they're like, you can't look at my life and be like, oh, Erica married a black man, half of her family is Mexican, now half her family is black, because I married a
Yeah.
new family, I
Well,
married
it's less
into another
important
family.
about who your family is. It's more about who are you, and do they have they had a conversation with you, and have they heard you say something? And I think that that's also hard, because I think we also need to give people the opportunity to prove that they have changed, when things have happened or they have said something. And I think that the reaction people have to saying negative things or something that is seen as offensive is where their real character comes out. How do they react? How do they respond? And um, are they changing? Do they change? Do they have a commitment to change? And I think we're very easy to find a tweet from 30 years ago and be like, all right, I hate this person. But I think that I also hate my tweets from, I didn't have Twitter, my Facebook posts from when I was 14. So I don't think anyone wants to be judged on that. So
No, I definitely want to be judged for what I was like when I was a teenager.
never, no one does. None of us knew anything, and we thought we knew everything, and that's
I
the
love
worst.
it. Oh my god, I love it. I love it. I love it.
I'm
Okay,
just so happy I didn't do YouTube when I was
oh
younger.
my god. I tell everyone how grateful I am that social media was not a thing when I was growing up. Like, the
Yeah.
internet basically wasn't a thing until I was in college, okay? So
Hmm.
all of the MySpaces and the early social media where everybody got stupid and now their stuff is coming out didn't exist. So I don't
Yeah.
have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Okay, we
It's
do
an
have one
interesting.
question. I don't know if you want to, if you can answer this one or if you know. So this Medic Knight asked, are there any issues you agree with libertarians on?
That's hard, because I think every time I've met someone who is libertarian, they have different ideas of what that is. So I don't know if I can necessarily say that.
That was I was like,
I
this is a down low trick question. No,
yes.
I don't know if they medic. I don't know if you know that that's a trick question. It's so true.
I would be happy to talk about specific policies, but I think it's too hard to say this is what everyone believes without offending somebody.
Oh yeah.
But
Oh yeah. There's some libertarians can either be like anarchists or just very liberal or just they're all over the place.
I've seen
Uh
everything. Yeah, I've definitely heard all over the board.
yes. Super funny. Okay, if you want to ask a more specific question, I'll ask it. But okay, so let's dig into housing. Now you are on the housing board of review for the city of Burlington. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. So
Yes.
what does that board do? Like, what's your job there?
Yeah. So we meet whenever we need to, which is fun, but but we basically determine if a security deposit is taken, part of it is taken, and a tenant feels that it was taken incorrectly or it shouldn't have been. We determine that. So we
Mm,
hear from both sides and then we make a decision. We also decide if the inspectors, so people who come in and check on like code violations and stuff, we
yeah.
determine if someone has an issue with the code violation or the assessment of it, then we can determine whether or not it has to be redone. So
Mm.
we decide on security deposits is the big thing, and just if code violations need to be checked out again.
So how has that role shaped your view of housing in Burlington?
That's a good question. I went into it being like, ah, people are so annoying and it's really hard to get housing. So I was going into it being like, I'm not sure what this is going to be like. And honestly, probably part of me was like, and I've always been a tenant, so how am I going to understand the landlord point of view?
Mm,
But very quickly, it's you hear from both people, you get
yeah.
you get evidence from all of them, texts, emails, all that. And so it's actually a really easy process to determine if something was done correctly or
Mm,
not. What I've learned is that a lot of people do not know what a security deposit is allowed to be used for in Burlington. And I think that that
yeah.
is is partially because a lot of people aren't reading all the rules, and that's okay because they don't have the time for that, or because people are like students or young people like myself who maybe had no idea that there even was one.
Yeah.
There's tenant like rights workbooks that I've definitely looked at before, and I don't really remember, or
Mm,
I've read it multiple times when I was in college, and each time I forget it. So I
yeah.
think that this is another reason that I think it really pushed me to say, all right, streamlined applications need to happen because I
Mm,
was seeing leases that all looked completely different. I was seeing there's just so much more that could be done if it was all done more online. You could have information about security deposits there. You could have, um, I mean, I know it's available on the website, and if you search through the different like parts of Burlington housing law, it's there. But I think that when someone wants to be a landlord, unless they are really motivated to go out and learn about security deposits, their first time learning about the rules are usually at the Housing Board of Review.
when something goes wrong.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep. That it seems like that's usually on both sides, right? Like
yeah,
we as landlords or we as tenants don't know what the rules are, don't know how they affect us, probably didn't even read our leases all the way through until something
yeah,
bad happens and then we have to deal with it.
right. And I think that like there needs to be I think there's just a lot of things in leases that people don't know can't be in there or shouldn't be in there. If people write something about security deposits in their lease, that doesn't take over the official Burlington security deposit law. So having anything, if you write security deposit can be used for XYZ in your lease, that doesn't mean anything. It what matters is what the law of security deposits is. So I think a lot of people don't know that. And I even when I joined housing board, I offered to my landlord. I was talking to her and her son, and I was like, "Oh, I know all this stuff now, so I can actually help with the lease and what it looks like and stuff." And they're wonderful people, and I've always had like landlords in Burlington. For the most part, I've had local owners, people who own a few properties and have rented to me, and they've just cared a lot about the place, and they have really gotten to know me and appreciate me living in their place because they think that I keep it nice. And I think like we were talking about earlier, like it really is important to have these connections and these relationships even in tenant and landlord, like, I don't know, if you own a property, you want to know the person. I would want to know the person that is living there, and I'd want to keep them living there if that's easier for me. It's harder for people to go find and sort through all the applications, which of course would be a little bit easier if we had a streamlined process. But um, even then, it's not fun to go through all these different people's applications, interview different people. And because of the housing crisis in Burlington, people are applying to so many apartments. So people who are landlords have to take so many applications because
Yeah.
they know that everyone's applying for like 20 different places
Yeah.
because it's so hard. So that's just like a cyclical thing that's happening, that more people are applying to places. So landlords are taking more and more applications, and then they have to spend more and more time. And if they're local landlords who only own a few properties and work full time, that's really hard. That's a
Yeah.
really hard thing to do. And I think that we need to stop that, because I think everyone wants to put in the time to find someone they like. But if you don't have the time, you're just going to choose someone that you think looks good, and all right, there we go.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that is so hard in being a landlord, right? Because we own a property, we've got apartments. And Sherry Lynn, I see your question. I'm going to ask it after I ask Olivia this one. She has a good question for you. What do you think about as a landlord, I'm not allowed to discriminate against people for many, many reasons. Not that I'm saying I want to be able to discriminate against people. However, UVM students in particular, now I know you're an alumni, so this is not meant to be cut on you, Olivia, but in general, the reality is young people often are not thoughtful or careful with their stuff. They wreck those downtown apartments. And so you have landlords who, we're not allowed to discriminate against college students. But at the same time, UVM, in my opinion, is a big reason why Burlington is so unaffordable, right? So if
Mhm.
now we can talk about zoning and the fact that we don't have enough housing stock, and that zoning is part of that problem, right? But another big
Yeah.
part is that UVM doesn't house its students, and they
Yep.
use the apartments in Burlington as dorms.
Yep.
What do you think about
Yes.
trying to get UVM to take more responsibility? Do we, I don't know, do we force them to build more housing? Do we say
Yeah.
landlords are allowed to discriminate against college
Hmm.
students? I know that's discriminates a weird word, so we'll
Yeah,
try to get through
I
that.
think it is such a hard thing, because I agree, UVM needs to have more housing. When I was at UVM, people all really struggled getting places to
Mm,
live if someone wanted to stay on junior year.
yeah.
And I agree, I would not have let me be a tenant for myself if let me now for me in junior year of college. That just was not, it's college. I also didn't know a lot of the rights that I had as a renter. And I remember we had two bathrooms with six people living there. And yeah, and they had to, our one of our bathrooms flooded, and they had to
Oh,
redo everything. So they put our toilet in like the hallway for like 2 weeks and weren't working on it. And I was like, this feels wrong. And my roommates were all like, don't bother our landlord. We're scared. We don't want to get kicked out. We're really
oh
worried.
wow.
And I was like, no, I'm going to send something. So I sent an email being like, hey, when we agreed to this lease, we had two bathrooms. We are going into like almost a month of having one bathroom. I think
Yeah.
we should have a reduced rent for this period of time. And he said yes. And I was like, oh, cool. And my friends were so worried. They were like, Olivia, you're going to get us kicked out. You're going to get us in trouble. And I just asked for the thing and we got it. And I was like, huh,
Because
maybe we
most
should
people
just
are
communicate.
reasonable. Yes.
I was like, yeah, it's weird that we have a toilet in our hallway for a few weeks. Is that okay? And my, yeah, my roommates were just like, no, this is fine. Like, this is, I think it's a mix between students don't actually know what their rights are and what they're able to do, and are scared of having conversations with their landlords because this is the first time they've lived in their own place besides college, and college dorms feel like you're at home with your parents, so
Yeah.
people don't know how to interact with their landlord in that tenant landlord like official kind of capacity. And I think there needs to be, yeah, there's so many people dealt with a lot of really gross, horrible things in their apartments because they didn't know they didn't have to. And I think that just continued. So the next people will move in and they'll be like, oh, well, this is just how it was. So I think that's part of the
Isn't that
reason the places
interesting?
are so are in really bad shape, is just because
People
everyone
just
talks
don't
to
know
each
any
other
better.
who are at school, and they don't know that they can
Yeah.
say, hey, I don't want that. And then by the time someone does, the landlord's like, shoot, this floor has been a problem for years, but no one ever mentioned it to me. And
Oh my God.
there you go.
Oh,
Because
I
people
can't.
aren't talking about it because they don't know.
I can't even. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna. We have. There's things as a landlord, or let me start over. There are things that I just thought everybody knew, right?
Hmm.
So, like, I remember I could hear water running. I could hear water running, and I asked not my current tenants, but the two young men who lived there before, college aged, late early
Hmm.
mid to mid 20s. I said, "Is your toilet running?" Because I'd hear the toilet flush, and then it would just whoosh, right. I
Yep.
said, "Hey, is your toilet running?" And they were like, "No, no, it's fine." And I said, "Okay," but I could hear the water, right?
Hmm.
And and then for sure, like I was sitting there, I heard the flush, I heard it start, I heard it keep going, and I messaged them again. Are you sure the toilet is not running?
Right.
Because I can hear water running. Oh, oh, do you mean that sound the toilet is making? I was like,
Yeah.
we got our water bill. It was like $500.
Yeah, and it's like a mix between people either don't know these things because it's the first experience they're having living in a home, or they are scared of losing it, and they don't want to mess something up. And what if they want to stay there? And I mean, this is a really important reason that I think just cause eviction is like really wonderful, because I think that you need there should be a reason, and that reason can be they didn't pay rent, or they've messed up the bathroom or destroyed a wall or something. But if there isn't a reason, and also if people like don't know, we have a lot of people who are new to living in homes in Burlington because they're recent grads or they're in school, and they don't know that the toilet running isn't going to be magically fixed. Because I mean, think about it. So many people were living with their parents, and probably just didn't know that different things existed or were happening. And I think that
Yep.
I learned a lot and I was definitely unique in my group of friends in that I was like, no, we deserve like a livable space. And they were like, oh,
Yeah.
I
We
don't
paid for
know.
this. It's in the
Yeah.
contract. That's what it
Yeah. And we
says.
were Yeah, and it was a lot. We were paying a lot for a place that continuously had people who either treated it horribly or didn't realize that things
Mm,
should be different. And that's kind of what adds to, I think, the really horrible state of so much of Burlington um housing. And I think, I mean, to go back to the point kind
oh,
of
yeah, the question,
what
original
UVM
question.
should,
Yes.
yeah, I do think UVM needs to do more. I also worry about UVM buying up more land from local landowners and building up from there. I don't want that either. So I think the best way is to incentivize long-term renters, because if you do that, then landlords are more likely to choose long-term renters, which are not necessarily going to be students.
Yeah.
Um, they might
Now
be. They might
you
be someone who's like, I want to keep working and stay, but like I did. But I think,
n-
yeah,
now you had an idea. One of the things you mentioned in your campaign pitch was tax break or like a tax
yeah.
incentive of some variety. Have you kind of worked out what that is?
Yeah, so I've looked a lot more into it. So there's actually a lot of towns and counties that have been looking into how do we fix this lack of housing? What do we do immediately? And a lot of them have been incentivizing property owners. So in a bunch of places in Colorado, I was looking, they have something called lease to locals, where they give money to people who are not doing short-term rentals but are actually choosing long-term rentals. Um, I think if there was a way for us to incentivize it either through tax breaks
Mm,
or or some sort of payment to make it so people want to have long-term renters, because I think it's easy to just continually flip, or it's not easy, but if you
yeah,
continually flip, you can increase the cost. And I think a lot of people, the reason that they choose new renters is because they can't afford it. So
mm,
they want people to pay more. But I think that is a place where I really do think that government and has the responsibility to come in and to help with that. How do
yeah,
we get the landlords and the homeowners to stay, and how do we get people who really want to be productive, consistent members of Burlington society, like people who want to live here and raise their families here?
yeah,
I want to continue to stay here, and my landlord likes me, so she wants me to stay. And I think that if she was given money from someone else, then she'd be even more happy to let me stay, you know? So
yeah,
I think there's a place for the government, the Burlington city government, and maybe even one day Vermont, to really like incentivize renting to long-term renters, because
locals.
that's easier for a lot of people.
Yeah. I like it. Okay, so Sherry Lynn's question, she said that she really likes what you're sharing. You seem very approachable and positive, but she's concerned because of the amount of progressive counselors that we already have, right? So we're
Hmm.
kind of seeing this thing where I'll say many of us don't feel heard or listened to by our city councilors, and they just sort of like vote together no matter what. So
Hmm.
she said what does she feel sets her apart, without burning down her own party? So she's saying you don't have to talk smack about anybody, but what do you
I would
think
never.
sets you apart, and what is your uniqueness from maybe the current city councilors?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I really like that question. I think there's a few things I want to say. The first thing is that that was a big decision uh, when I decided to run as an independent and not
Mm,
as a progressive. I definitely, in my personal life, am a progressive. I think what I recognize is that being in the New North End, progressive is seen as a bad word. Um, a lot of times the P word scares people away, and I don't
yeah,
want to do that. I think that I am an incredibly empathetic and kind person, and I want to hear from everyone. And
yeah,
I think the funny thing is a progressive policy is lower property taxes. In fact, no property
mm,
taxes is a progressive policy. And I think
what?
when I knocked on doors and when I talked with people, I found out that even if they hated the word progressive, there were progressive policies they agreed with. And it's on the Vermont Progressive website is lower or no property taxes. That's a huge part. And I think, yeah, like some people don't know that or don't recognize that they might agree with the policy because it is progressive. I think um, the big thing I've been talking about is being the person who talks and translates science to policy or one thing to another. And I recognize that I am a progressive and a lot of people in my neighborhood are not. And I think that that is extremely important to think about. How do I match what I value with the values of my constituents? And I think that's something that I'm really good at. So I think I don't put party above values or constituents. I really admire and love a lot of people who are on city council, and I really would want to find a way to connect with each and every counselor. I wouldn't write someone off. I think that I'm unique because I am going to vote with my values and my constituents' values. I'm going to see what is the best thing for us, and that if that aligns with the party, then it aligns with the party. But yeah, progressive housing policy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm like, do you know if that property tax thing is on the website somewhere?
Yeah, I
Is
found
it
it
on
on
the
there. I will
platform?
find it. Yeah.
I'm like,
Um,
our story, our
let's see.
legacy issues, statement of principles. How
Yep,
do they,
it is under economic justice and taxes. It says, we believe Vermont needs a progressive tax system where wealthier Vermonters pay a higher percentage of their income in taxes than low to moderate income Vermonters. We believe in reducing our reliance on property and other regressive taxes. And I think that that is a really important piece of the policy,
what?
because I think a lot of people are annoyed with property taxes. So
This is
that's
wild.
something we all agree on, right?
I can't even wait. Is it under statement of principles?
It's under, yeah, so it's under platform.
Wait,
If you go to
Vermont.
legislature and then platform,
Oh, legislature, our platform. Okay,
and
got
it's
it.
under economic justice. It's the first,
Shut the
it says
front door.
taxes.
Hold on, I'm
We
going to
believe
share
in
this guy.
reducing our reliance on property taxes.
Yep.
And that's something that I agree with very
Huh.
much so.
Isn't that
I don't think
fascinating?
property taxes should be as important as they are.
So would we shift because right, because that's a huge piece of income for the state and
Hmm.
for the city. So would that all shift? So would it be like everything would be income tax instead of property taxes
That's
or
hard to
other
know. I
things?
think that I mean, that's
That's
not something that's
interesting.
going to happen overnight, clearly, but I think is something that as we
Huh.
look to having more people in Burlington, more people doesn't mean we have to raise taxes. More people means we have more people.
More higher tax
And
base. That's what I've
yeah,
been arguing. This is what I'm
yeah.
saying.
And I think
We
yeah,
we don't need higher taxes. Every time they raise taxes, more people leave.
we just need
You know,
more of a tax base, and we have people who want to be here. So
yes. That's what
yeah.
our property taxes with the reassessment last year went up $4,000.
Yeah,
Four
the reappraisal I think
thousand
was
dollars.
a huge that's been a huge reason also why I ran, because I was like, I want to learn more about this. I know it's something that's frustrating to everyone who owns homes. My landlord has talked to me about it a bunch, and I'm like, I don't know about this, but it affects my neighbors, it affects my landlord, it affects my ability to live in Burlington. So it's something that I care about. And
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
do
What?
not envy the people who are on the board that had to listen to every single
Oh, those
reappraisal
poor people.
conversation.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wish I could have sent them a pizza or something.
Some
Because
flowers and some
that I can't
chocolates or
imagine
something.
how long those meetings went on for.
Sherry Lynn said, "Thank you for your answer, Olivia." And she also said, "Holy crap!" Because I think we're both sort of stunned that this is here.
See, that's why,
The,
and I think there was a little bit of like stereotyping, deciding, oh, I disagree with every part of a progressive. I bet you there's parts that you like of everything.
well, and this is the thing, I joke, the featured video on my YouTube channel is I'm a conservative because I'm a liberal. That's what I say. Like I want, I volunteered for Vermont freedom to marry, to legalize gay marriage, and I've worked for all of these things. Like I want everybody to be happy and healthy. I don't want the government discriminating against anybody. I don't think that that's okay. Like I want everybody to, the freedom of speech and freedom of association and all of these things. Like to me, in order for all of us to get to do all of whatever we want to do for ourselves in our own lives and our own personal bedrooms and everything, means that we have to protect these rights. And and so it's like we've already established we have so many shared values, but how do we get there?
Yeah,
How do we preserve them? How do we make sure everybody has it? How do we do
yeah.
so this is okay. So this is really interesting. I want to get your take on another suggestion that I've heard. Christopher Aaron Felker, who's the Burlington GOP chair, presented this really cool idea that I guess they're doing in some other cities. Probably, I think even like Denver. So we've talked about Colorado a few times here. And he said in some cities, what they do is they turn apartment buildings into condo units. So because Burlington doesn't have basically the beginner's market. Oh, what's the word for that? Oh, what's the word? Like, your first home, right? First time home buyers.
Right.
The lower cost first house that you buy as a new homeowner, right? So there's no lower, oh God, oh, my brain is farting. What is that word? Basically, there's no
I wish I could
entry
help.
level housing. There's no
Right.
entry level housing, for lack of a better word. I know there's a different word for it, but right. So if the average house in Burlington's like $350,000, that's a lot of money for people to be able to afford. But they could afford $150,000 or maybe $200,000 for a condo, like a duplex split in half, basically.
Yeah.
And I said, that's fascinating. I'd never even heard anybody say that before.
Yeah, I would love to learn more about that. I think that is something we need. And when you look at the duplexes, so many people buy them to rent half because that's how they can afford it. Instead, if people could just get each one, then we would also just maybe have more homeowners, which would be really cool, or condo owners. But
right, like especially as young people starting out, I think I'm trying to remember which size buildings you could do it in. I don't know. I should have told Christopher to watch, because I knew I wanted to ask you this question so that he could comment and tell us what the answers are. But
yeah, I'd love to learn more about that.
Right? Like, how cool would it be? And I think it's been suggested that that's one of the problems, or one of the struggles in Burlington, is because we have so many more renters than homeowners. There really is a disconnect for how much things cost, why they cost what they do, what taxes are. And so whereas in some cities where it's 50-50, or there's more homeowners than renters, there isn't as much of a adversarial relationship.
Yeah,
I think.
because it kind of feels like landlords have their pick of the litter, but renters have to kind of like really push themselves in there. And I think that healthy cities and healthy economies have a much higher vacancy rate than Burlington. And I
Yes.
think that whatever we can do to make it easier to go from renter to homeowner, especially with my generation that has so much debt. Like, I've never really thought of homeownership as something that I could do or afford. It's not something that's in my plan because I don't think that's possible. And I think that going from a renter to a homeowner was a lot easier 10, 20 years ago, and now is so hard that we need to make that transition easier.
Agreed. I totally agree. I really, oh my God, if we start on the student loan conversation,
Yeah.
I
No, it's a nice one to avoid because I try to
the
avoid
whole thing is so
thinking about it too much.
oh, seriously. Well, and it's just like the whole thing is such a boondoggle. It really is. No matter which way you dice it up, we
Yeah.
trapped ourselves into it. We told everybody they had to go to college, and now they have all this
Yeah.
debt, and now nobody
You
can
need a
afford to have
bachelor's
kids
for
or a
entry
home.
level positions. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's so
And
dumb, and I remember the shift because it happened around when I went to college, where it now became that you had to have a college education to get an entry level job instead
yeah.
of working your way up. And,
hmm
I don't know
And
who
it wasn't
decided
seen
that was a good
as
idea.
equal. Yeah.
Yeah, like whoever decided that was a good
Yeah.
idea needs to be fired like 1,000 times.
Yeah. I don't know how that happened, but it definitely it was expected when I was in high school to go to college. And I think so much of my work when I worked as an academic coach, but also when I've done education projects at work is how do we build that other workforce? How do we build apprenticeships and things for people who don't want to do school? And a lot of people don't feel like they can't succeed at college, and then they feel like they're a failure when they actually have something that they're really good at or something that they could do, but they aren't given the opportunities and the ability to do those things. And I think
Yep.
that we look down on people who do traditionally blue collar work, and we say, oh, that's not like worth it. But I
Yep.
have a lot of friends who didn't finish college who are doing great and don't have debt that I have. So I think sometimes I'm like, that when you're playing life and you choose the college instead of
Yes.
job, it feels like that was actually a warning that I did not listen to.
We were clearly not paying enough attention when we were playing that
No,
game.
no, the
I
game of
tell
life
people,
told us, but
I tell people all the time, I don't want to begrudge my college education. I got a great
yeah.
education in accounting from Champlain College, and I still use it, so I can't complain too much. But I tell people all the time, if I had my life to live over again, I would go to trade school. I would learn to be an electrician,
Mhm.
and I would use the same entrepreneurial spirit that I have to be an electrician. It's, not the safest job, obviously, but it's still not, the dirtiest or grossest. And
Mhm.
you can build a business and you can train people, and
Yeah.
you can be a mentor and all of the same things that I like doing now, but with
Yeah.
like, a year of school and like $10,000 worth of education instead of what I
Yep.
have instead.
Yeah. I think I definitely wish I had learned more. I When I was growing up, it was just you're going to college and that's it.
Yeah.
And I just wish that there was more agency and choice given to young people around that.
Yeah.
Also, but I'm also like, I don't know what I would have chose or what I would have done, but I think that it's it's hard to figure that out when you're younger. And
Hard
I'm
to
very
know.
happy when I hear younger people talking about, oh, I don't think I'm going to go right to college. I'm going to figure this out. And I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Smart. Do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Go figure out who you are before you take on
But then
debt
I
that
was
you.
definitely like a very educationally focused person. I was like, I
Mm,
like school. I want to do school. Um, and so I felt like I was a success because I fit that prototype. And I was like, all right, I go this way because that's the way that I have to go, but I'm also good at it. And
yeah.
I really feel for the people who were pushed that way and that was not their strength and
Yeah.
felt bad in our society where we really value things that maybe we shouldn't value as much.
Yeah. Definitely some restructuring is in order. I
Yeah,
just realized that we've already rounded an hour. Like this went by so fast.
it
So
did. Yeah.
before we get to start wrapping it up, is there any other specific things about housing, any ideas that you wanted to share, or kind of policies that you're brainstorming or thinking about that would be interesting for our viewers and for Burlington residents?
Hmm. Housing, I think I've like hit the two big things is incentivize
Okay.
long-term rentals and streamline the application process. I think
Okay.
those are very important
Some
things
big
that
things.
is already enough to
Cool.
focus on. I think
All right.
something that I really would like to see as well is a business development specialist in Burlington who would help specifically with BIPOC and women-owned businesses. So I think that a lot of the work we do at Resonance is business development work and working with the private sector. And I think that a lot of people could have really great, successful small businesses if we give them the support that they need. A lot of
Mm,
people, like we're saying, aren't taught
yeah.
business skills in school, not even in college, unless you go get an MBA or you're a business major or
Yeah.
economics. I didn't learn anything about business in environmental studies or policy. So I
Mm,
think that people need support with that, and specifically we have a lot of great BIPOC and women-owned businesses in Burlington, and I think we need to take those existing businesses and people who want to build up their business and give them more support so that they can succeed, and so that they can just like really show how incredible Burlington is. I think a lot of people push for like Burlington is a huge tourism place. However,
yeah.
through the pandemic, I saw Burlington locals were the ones building up the businesses, really keeping them
Yeah.
afloat. People in Burlington stepped up, they ordered out, they really just like got really supported our local businesses, and I think
Yeah.
that that's something that Burlington and Vermont is really something really cool about us, is just we really like our businesses. Like I have the wine store I go to, and I have like the people that I talk to at different places, and I love going to Phoenix Books to pick out my
Yeah.
books, and there's just like so many places that I really like, and I think that I would really like to see us provide more support for the business community in Burlington.
Well, and my husband and I both are big advocates for entrepreneurship, particularly. I've shared this on the program before. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I went to jail. And when you get out of jail, people don't want to hire you. I know that's a shocker,
Yep.
right? They're like, we can't trust you. We don't want to give you a job. And not
Yeah.
only that, they don't want to give you housing. They don't want to let you rent their apartments either.
They don't
And
want to
so
fund your business. Yeah.
right, exactly. And my and so what so we both have experienced areas of prejudice. He's a dark-skinned black person in Hollywood, which that all that Hollywood so white stuff and all of these things. So
Hmm.
we know, like, he's a stunt man and a fight choreographer, and there aren't enough dark-skinned black male leads for him to stunt
Right.
double for. You see, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
he started his own film production business. He said, I'm not going to
That's
wait
awesome.
for somebody to give me a job. I'm going to make my own job. For
Yeah.
me, it was okay. I need to figure out a way to take care of myself and find a good place to live that I don't have to ask permission for. And so when you
Hmm.
create your own thing and it is
Yeah.
yours, there is that ownership really, when you no longer have to ask permission to take care of yourself and your family, there's so much
Yeah.
power in that.
Yeah. And I think like having someone who people could go to in Burlington, a business development specialist who could say, "Hey, you are a member of the BIPOC community or a woman or someone who was previously incarcerated, you could go get that support to build up your business and have help." And then, yeah, I think that that's something that we do a lot in international development in the US. We go help build up the entrepreneurs and small businesses in developing countries. And I don't know that that same support really happens here. We should really put more into our small businesses, and especially in Burlington and Vermont,
Yeah.
where people really like to know the person, and they like to get to know the person they get coffee from every week, or who they're buying food
Hmm.
from or something. And
Yep.
like I love the Intervale. I love going to the Intervale and getting my food dropped off, and they email me if there's a problem or an update, and I love
Yeah.
that personal connection. And I would really like to see more support given to people who want to be entrepreneurs and who want to build their own business. My mom has had a small business my whole life, or
Mm.
she had it after my parents got divorced, but I spent every day after school doing homework in the like back office of her store because she was always working. And I she was doing it all like trying to learn on her own throughout it, and I would have loved to see her get support in that way of like she had to learn all of the things herself. She was an art major in college, and then she raised my sister and I, and didn't work until I was probably like in fourth or fifth grade, and then she had her own business and had to just figure it out, and worked very long hours with us hanging out. And I just really, yeah, I saw her have that experience, and I was like, now that I'm doing business development support, I'm like, I would have loved to do it for someone like my mom and help her
Yeah.
figure out all these things, and finances, and inventory, and what happens when someone
Mm,
steals from you. And yeah, there's just so much stuff that people, I mean, we're talking about renters not knowing housing, and people who want to get into business not knowing that. How do we build those resources for people to succeed on their own?
amen. I think that is a perfect place to put a pin in our conversation. Um, I want to just, before we get off, I just want to share your website here for everybody. So first of all, I just want to show everybody this picture. Look at this picture with her and Olivia and the chickens. Look at this picture. I love this picture. I just had to show this picture. Everybody, okay, so the website is oliviaforoffice.com, right? oliviaforoffice.com.
Yes.
Where do they find you on all the social medias and stuff?
Olivia for Ward 7. If you type that in Facebook, I'm on just Facebook for that, because it's hard to manage a lot of different things.
Oh, girl, you are telling me. I understand. I started a Twitter account the other day because I was told I had to for my congressional campaign. And I was like, but I don't want
Yeah.
to. And then
I was told to do that in grad school, and I didn't.
yeah, I'm like, I think I'm better off for not really ever having had a Twitter personally, but I had one and I never posted to it. And then I canceled it
Yeah.
because I never posted to it. So,
Yeah, it
okay.
is hard to manage all of those things.
So Olivia for Ward 7. No,
Yes.
right? Olivia for Ward 7 on
Yeah.
Facebook, and then
Hmm.
oliviaforoffice.com.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to continuing our conversations. I We should plan stuff like this,
Yeah.
for people to have conversations in public when, if they when they disagree on
Yeah.
things.
Block party.
Yeah, you know what?
We
I'm
could have a
gonna do
block party.
as soon as we have a nice day and we can get outside, I'm totally gonna do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically,
We just need to get
when my
together
lawn
more.
is in a puddle, that's what I need to do. Um,
Oh, I don't know how long you're gonna have to wait for that.
oh my God, it's crazy out there right now. Um,
Yeah.
and just a little plug for myself personally at the end of the program. I wore my I Love Your Money t-shirt, iloveyourmoney.net. So we're going to say that this show's sponsor is I Love Your Money. I do small business bookkeeping and consulting. A new feature that we're offering for folks is live bookkeeping. So a lot of times people do their own books, and they're normally pretty good, but they're not accountants necessarily, and they struggle sometimes with the software or how to do certain things. So I've started this new service where basically I do consulting and we remote in, and then you show me what your questions are or how to fix whatever it is that you need, and then you can move along. So it's really fun. It's a way that I get to interact with more people, and I really love teaching. And I have 25 years of experience using QuickBooks desktop and QuickBooks Online. So I've just been doing this forever, literally more than half my life at this point, which is crazy to say. I'm not old now, um, but yeah. So it's that time of year. Everybody's getting their stuff together. If you need a bookkeeper, shoot me a private message, and we can see if I Love Your Money is a good fit. So that's our program pitch for the day. And I just want to say one more time, Olivia, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you for sharing your
Yeah.
campaign, and thank you for sharing your ideas.
And thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate this. And I think that this is just a great step forward for our neighborhood and community, and for our relationship as well. We can continue to have these really good conversations because we're on the same team.
Amen. I like it. All right. Okay, everybody, have a good night.
Good